Hey everyone, welcome back to the Nello Reads channel. Our first Choosing Beggars story of the day comes from Dave AWB. Ex-friend wanted me to work for him. Guess how much he wanted to pay. 15 or so years ago, yeah, quite some time ago, I'll recount the story as I remember it, I'd found myself in a weird situation where I'd been left jobless after leaving my previous job to start a new one. The new job never materialized, and I found myself without work. Thankfully, I'd kept enough savings to cover my mortgage and bills for a few months. One of my neighbors, whom at this point I'd been friendly with for a few years, was a self-employed air conditioning fitter. I'd mentioned to him my predicament over a drink at our local bar, and he mentioned he may be able to help me out in the short term with some small jobs he had coming up. Great, I thought. A few extra dollars couldn't hurt, right? Plus, doing some manual work could be just what I needed. Well, a week passes, and my neighbor gives me a call and mentions he has a friend that needs some development work done. I am a software engineer by trade. He asks me if I would be interested in being introduced to them. This surprised me given his background as a tradesman, but sure, this sounded great. Sure, I said. Let me know the details and I'll set something up. He looked at me puzzled and said, no? I'll set it up. You just need to come on a call when I asked you to, okay? Alarm bells were starting to sound in my head. Okay, what exactly is this work, I asked. He responded that they were looking for someone to do a quick once-over of their website. Nothing too serious. Apparently, they'd had an agency build it for them a few years prior and needed some maintenance work done. Now, this isn't exactly my area of expertise, but I did have a grounding in web development, though my knowledge was a little outdated. This is where it got weird. I asked him how much his friend was willing to pay for my time. His response is permanently etched in my memory. What? If anyone's going to pay you, it'll be me and my business. But since you are out of work right now, you've got loads of free time to just do this as a favor for me. I politely declined his overly generous offer. He immediately got mad at me, shouting down the phone things like, "You can't decline this. I've already told my friend I know someone that can do the work. And you're going to claim job-seeking benefits anyway. That'll be good enough payment." The conversation lasted a few more minutes, with me trying to get him to see at least a little reason. We had been friendly for some time after all. Enough was enough, and I hung up. 30 minutes later, my doorbell rings. I was in the middle of typing out some emails and just about to start doing some general chores around the house. Surprise, surprise, it was my neighbor. He was so offended that I hung up on him, he just had to give me a piece of his mind. Needless to say, I wasn't going to take much more of this and just close the door on him. I moved to another room and ignored the banging at my door. As fate would have it, I found a new job pretty quickly. The company I ended up working for was run by a great guy that I got on with really well. Over lunch, nearly a year after the ordeal above, I found out that my boss knows my idiot neighbor as well as the client that wanted the work done on his site. They'd been friends for years. Not only was the description of the work completely wrong, but the client was also willing to pay big bucks for someone to work in-house on their site for a year. I'm so glad I dodged that bullet, though living near to that guy did take its toll. If anyone cares, the idiot neighbor moved away a few years later. Good riddance. It's crazy to me that the neighbor goes, "Oh yeah, I'll help you make some money," then offers him a job that won't earn him money and is confused when the OP turns it down. But since he moved away, this crazy guy could be living anywhere. In fact, he may even be your neighbor. I just hope he's not mine. Our next story comes from WarLazy7979. I hate garage sales. Many years ago, we moved to another country, so when it was time to decide what we'd be packing into the shipping container, we pulled a lot of stuff to the side as we knew all of our stuff would not fit in the container. We had a double garage, so we parked the cars in the driveway for over a week and started putting the things we weren't going to take in the garage for sale. Garage sale weekend comes around, and the garage was packed with stuff. There were a lot of baby things that our then 3-year-old no longer needed, including a bouncer, portable cot, stroller, etc. These were all high-end pieces because, like most parents, we were afraid of getting cheap items that put our baby at risk. Plus the other household things like outdoor furniture, tools, bookshelves, crystal sets, you get the picture. We put an ad in the local paper advertising the garage sale, and at 7 a.m. there were already people waiting outside. The prices were all reasonable because we wanted to sell everything in the garage, and for the most part, the garage was emptying nicely. The baby items were sitting along one wall when Choosing Beggar comes in. How much for the baby items? The bouncer is $10, the portable cot $40, and the stroller is $20. That's too expensive for old things. I'll give you $10 for the lot. No, these items are all in good condition, and the prices are fair. This is when the choosing beggar slipped up and said, "I own a secondhand store, and I'm telling you you're asking too much." Oh, now I see. You want my stuff for next to nothing, so you can make money from my things in your store. You can have all 3 things for $50, or you can leave. The choosing beggar then proceeds to pick up those 3 items, telling me $10 is enough, and that's all she's giving me. I told her unless she had $50 for those things, she could put them down and get out of my garage. She puts them down and informs me that she'll be back in a couple hours, and when these items are still here, she'll take them all for $5. I told her once again to get out and not come back. The garage sale was wrapping up in the afternoon, and we'd made a decent amount of money selling our old items. There were a few odds and ends left, which we planned on giving to our friends. The baby items were still there, so I called my friend who had recently become a grandmother and asked if she'd like them. My friend was thrilled, as her son and daughter-in-law both worked, and she'd be looking after her grandchild during the day. This meant she would have her own set of things for the baby in her home, making it easier for her son and daughter-in-law. Just as my friend is loading the items in her car, along comes the choosing beggar. "What are you doing? I wanted those things." "Too bad, they're no longer for sale." "How much did you con this poor person for?" "Free. I'm giving them to her." "You can't do that. I offered you $10 for them." "Actually, I can. They are still mine, and I can smash them to pieces or give them away." "You'd rather give them away than make $10? I wanted them first. You know the rules of selling. First in, first served." "There's also a thing called paying a fair price, and you refused my price. See ya." I waved goodbye to my friend, and the choosing beggar started to follow me into the garage to see what else was left. I hit the remote to close the door. In the end, my friend wanted to thank us for giving her these baby items, so once our house was all packed up, she invited us over for dinner a few times so we wouldn't have to eat takeout every night. As far as I was concerned, this was a beautiful trade-off. Wow, just giving that stuff away right in front of the choosing beggar was a real power play. Big props to the OP. Hopefully it teaches the choosing beggar that you can't strong-arm someone into getting what you want. It seems like there's just something about garage sales that makes deal-hungry people foam at the mouth. People just go nuts at these things. The third story comes from Drac and Maw. I missed my return train, refund my entire trip. This summer, a Monday morning, the phone rang. My colleague picked up the phone with the usual, "X Park, I'm X, how can I help you?" My desk is right in front of hers, so I could see the smile on her face slowly disappear. Here's what happened. The lady on the phone had booked 2 tickets for our park, which cost, in total, $59 for 2 adults. She had come the previous Saturday and had enjoyed her visit. However, when she and her guests decided to leave the park, they realized they had missed the last train to their return destination. So the lady had to call a cab and told us she had to pay $118 to go back home. She was furious and asked us to refund her tickets and her cab ride. Of course, my colleague told her it was impossible. She had already visited the park, validated the tickets, and spent the day there. We are a small amusement center, and due to the current pandemic restrictions, we can only welcome 1,000 visitors a day. But still, it is in no case our responsibility to make sure our guests don't miss their bus/train. We don't have any shuttle from the train station to the park, as it is a 3-minute walk from there. So, after politely explaining why we would not refund her tickets, the lady was still going on and on about being refunded. At least for her cab expenses. It was ridiculous, and after 15 minutes on the phone, my colleague finally hung up. She was exhausted, and the lady had insulted her with every word in the dictionary. She took a big long break outside before she could calm down and take other calls. The next day, the lady called again. This time, it was a student doing a part-time job in our center that replied. The lady was, of course, awful to her, and the poor girl was distraught and on the verge of tears. This awoke my mama bear instinct, and I told our student to give me the phone. I politely told the lady off because it was not our problem. I had all the difficulties in the world to stay polite, but kill them with kindness, as they say. Then I offered hot chocolate to my poor student, who was doing a very nice job, but had the misfortune of talking to the worst customer ever encountered in our center. 2 or 3 days later, our boss gets an email from the Office of Consumer Protection. The lady had called them and said we were disrespectful, called her a liar, and laughed at her face. Our customer service was terrible, and it was the worst she had ever been treated in her entire life. My colleague and myself were disgusted. My colleague had been nothing but apologetic and polite to that lady who was just screaming at her for 15 minutes. Same thing with my student and myself. Our boss was scared of the repercussions repercussions and sent an email to the lady. He offered her a free entry for the inconvenience and a free meal at the park, even though we had done nothing wrong. Later that day, the lady replied to the email, unhappy again. She said she would not use only one free entry. I have 3 children and my husband, so we need at least 5 tickets, 5 meals, and the guarantee we will be able to come and go back home after the visit. This time, my boss was enraged. He told her to take the free entry or take nothing, and he didn't care what the impact would be. He enclosed the Office of Customer Protection to the email as well as corporate. We heard nothing more of it for a while, and our boss told us to blacklist her phone number and email address. Sometime after, the boss told us corporate had just let him know the lady had been permanently banned from the park. She had been very rude to them as well. She menaced them to call her lawyer and so on. This whole thing was just totally ridiculous. The nerve of some people. You know how sometimes when you call customer support, the automated voice goes, "This call may be recorded for training purposes." I think instead it should say, "This call is being recorded, so if you act like a maniac, we have proof." Because in situations like this, they could have just emailed that call over to their boss. He would have seen that she's crazy, and she could have been banned then and there without having to go through corporate. I'm just glad she never got to use that free pass before being banned. Our next story of the day is from Rumshum. Sister demands for payment, even though she gets near $500 without working per month, and steals our mom. I know the title may sound kinda weird, but let me explain it to you. In my family, we are 4 members at the moment. My big brother, who works as an animator and is a little older than 25 years old, and is moving out in a few days. Myself, who is less than 20, who is not working, but studying. My mom, who works by herself doing overalls for kindergarten teachers and children. And finally, my sister, who is almost in her 30s and is, quote, working with my mom and is studying fashion and how to make clothes. With this little introduction, let's begin. My sister, at the age of 19, started studying as an accountant and went with it for at least 6 years in a free college, where my mom would have to buy her books and give her some money for taking the bus to college. When she was near 25 years old, she one day randomly said, "I don't want to study this anymore," and just stopped going to those classes. She was less than a year away from getting her degree. After that, she begged my mom to pay for her to study for her new career that, at the moment, would cost at least $207 a month. My mom at the time was earning around $1,000 a month. My mom somehow agreed. When I turned 17, I finished high school and was able to choose a college. I picked one that was $100 a month all included. Materials, uniform, and it would even give me a chance to work in some foreign countries. After 2 months, my mom asked to have a chat with me and told me, "We are going through a rough time with money, and I decided that I'm not going to pay for your college anymore." I was devastated and angry, but I understood. If she didn't have the money, there was nothing I could do about it, except work. But in my country, it's kind of hard to find a job as a minor, and I have scoliosis, so I'm kind of screwed in that sense. But my mom kept paying for my sister's college. When I found that out, I got pissed, and there was a huge argument in my house because if there was no money, how were they paying for my sister's college, who at the moment was 25 or 26? Like, the hell? And I forgot to mention that she needed to pay for other things and not only college. Models, someone who would take photos of her clothing, people who would sew her clothes, etc. And it would end up being like $500 sometimes. My sister was, quote, working with my mom, and that's why they were okay with paying for her college. But she wouldn't answer phone calls or even work an hour a day with my mom. Meanwhile, she was not doing almost anything since she would pay people to do her duties in college and not work. I had to not go to college for a whole year just for her to waste hers like that. Fast forward to this year. Now, I'm finally able to go to college because my dad is paying for it. Meanwhile, my mom is still paying for my sister's everything. A few months ago, I saw my mom crying and asked what happened. She explained to me that she lost near $1,000 and can't understand how. She explained that she has 2 bank accounts, the personal one and her work one. The second one is where all the work money goes when people pay for her stuff. And then she realized there is only one other person who knows the account details: my sister. At the moment, my sister was not at home, so my mom went to her room and found $300 in cash, and it was really suspicious since my mom never gave her that money. When she confronted my sister about it, she said something like, "Oh yeah, my boyfriend gifted that to me, haha." And my mom was so devastated that she just went, "Okay, and did not want to argue or kick her out. My sister now says to my mom that she wants her payment for all these years that she didn't get money while working for her. She didn't get money because it went towards her college and all the crap she was paying for. Now, today it happened again. My sister has mysterious boxes that cost her about $10 each. 10 boxes and no real job. Yet she keeps asking my mom for money because she, quote, doesn't get paid. I skipped some details, but I would be more than glad to answer some questions. Also, I think the main problem is that she is almost in her 30s and is not actually working and is still getting everything paid. Plus, she's ungrateful as hell, and let's not forget that it seems like she is stealing from our own mother. So that's where the Reddit post ends. I scrolled through the comments and I didn't see too much more elaboration, but I don't really see this story ending well in the future. Especially once tax time comes around, using business money for personal expenses is a big no-no, especially if you can't explain where that money went. So depending on what the sister did with it, I could see some big problems coming up in the future. I just hope one day that karma comes for her. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and I hope to see you in the next video.